My son spoke to me without looking me in the eye. "From now on, Mom, the bank is going to transfer your Social Security directly to my account," he said while checking his phone. "You don't need money, just a corner to die." The spoon I was holding fell to the floor. The sound of metal against the tile felt like a gunshot. I tried to answer, but the words got stuck in my throat. David didn't even look up. He kept tapping his phone screen as if he were talking to a stranger. And for the first time in 70 years, I felt that my own son had erased my existence from his life. I swallowed hard, picked up the spoon, and stood in front of the stove. The pot roast I was making for the two of us was still bubbling, but the aroma, which had always comforted me, now made my stomach turn. The house, my house, suddenly felt foreign to me. That night, while the clock struck 11 o'clock, I sat in the darkness of the dining room. The silence weighed more than the years. In the distance, I could hear Vanessa, his wife, laughing in the bedroom. That woman had achieved what neither poverty nor widowhood could, tearing every trace of compassion out of my son. Since they got married, everything changed. The house, which was once a refuge, became a prison. Sometimes, when I hear her laugh, I remember the first time I saw her. She was young, pretty, with those fake manners that hide arrogance. "Your son has a big heart, ma'am," she told me that afternoon while I was serving coffee. I didn't imagine that years later, she would be the one to rip it out of him piece by piece. But before continuing, I want to extend a very special invitation to you. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories. And comment down below which city you are watching us from. Now, let's continue. That night, I didn't turn on the bedroom light. The air smelled of dampness and sadness. On my nightstand was the photograph of David when he was 8 years old, smiling without teeth, hugging a stray dog we rescued together. He was my life. I worked 40 years as an elementary school teacher, waking up before dawn, sewing my own dresses, giving up every pleasure to give him the best. And now, he didn't even call me Mom, just Evelyn. The tears burned, but I didn't let them fall. At this age, one learns that crying is useless when the heart is already broken. The next morning, Vanessa was waiting for me in the kitchen. She had a smile so fake it hurt. "Evelyn," she said while stirring her coffee, "don't take it the wrong way. David just wants to help you." "Help me? By taking my money?" "It is for your own good. At your age, you don't need so much anymore. Besides, the bank is complicated. And you are not up for those errands." Her words were sweet, but each one was a knife. "Don't worry, dear," I replied calmly. "I am not offended." She smiled, believing she had tamed me. She didn't know that behind that calm was something new, a determination that neither she nor my son knew. During the day, I feigned normality. I made my bed, I swept, I cooked. But while I was washing the dishes, an idea began to take shape in my mind. Small, subtle, dangerous. I wasn't going to scream or cry. I wasn't going to ask for anything. I was simply going to do something they would never expect from me. I went to my room and opened the old closet. In the back, between folded sheets and a lace tablecloth, there was a tin box. Inside, I kept things no one remembered. Letters, photos, old coins, and a small glass jar with a clear liquid. I had kept it out of habit, for no reason. It was a jar of concentrated bleach from the times when I cleaned the school where I worked. I took it out. I observed it against the light. It didn't have a purpose yet, but I knew that tonight it would. When evening fell, I prepared dinner as always: roast beef, mashed potatoes, and freshly made bread. David arrived from work with the same distant expression of the last few months. "Did you do the bank paperwork yet?" he asked without even saying hello. "Yes," I lied. "I already did it." "Perfect," he said, pouring himself a glass of wine. "Vanessa and I will speak with the manager tomorrow." I nodded without saying anything. During dinner, there was no conversation, only the sound of silverware and the television in the background. When they finished, they went to sleep. I stayed behind picking up the dishes and cleaning the table. At midnight, I got up. The clock struck 12. The silence was so deep I could hear my breathing. I went to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator and stared at its illuminated interior. Inside, on the middle shelf, I placed a plate covered with aluminum foil. On top, David's favorite dessert, homemade chocolate cake. And next to it, a pitcher of water. Everything seemed normal. But in the back, under a plastic wrapping, I hid the bank documents, the copies of the forms he had falsified to transfer my pension. I had recovered them that afternoon when Vanessa left them on the table without suspecting I would recognize them. Now they rested frozen inside the refrigerator, encased in a bag of solid ice. I knew he would look for them the next day, believing everything was under control. That night, I slept little, but peacefully. For the first time in a long time, I felt that the fear had transformed into something different. Power. Dawn arrived with its routine. Footsteps, doors, the smell of coffee. I was sitting in the kitchen when David opened the refrigerator. Everything happened in a matter of seconds. First, the silence. Then, a dull thud. The sound of glass hitting the floor. And finally, his scream. A scream so loud it made the walls vibrate. A scream of fear, not pain. Vanessa ran from the bedroom. "What's wrong?" she shouted. David just pointed at the refrigerator, trembling. Inside, on the shelf, the documents were floating in the block of ice, perfectly visible, with my signature next to his forged one. On top, a note from me. "Never underestimate a mother, not even an old one." I stood up slowly, looked him in the eye, and said, "Good morning, son. Shall I pour you some coffee?" He didn't answer. He just walked away, pale, his hands shaking. And I, for the first time in years, smiled again. The noise of the refrigerator still echoed in my head when I sat by the window. The morning was cold, with a weak sun that barely managed to illuminate the garden. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from exhaustion. It was the exhaustion of a lifetime, of having given everything and having been left with nothing. The reflection in the glass returned the image of a woman I no longer recognized. White hair, marked skin, opaque eyes, and yet, behind that worn face still lived the girl I once was, the one who dreamed of a family, of a sincere love, of a son who would hug her without shame, the same one who believed that kindness was always rewarded. How naive I was. I married Arthur at 22, a man with firm hands and an easy smile. We had nothing, just a rented room and an old radio that always played with static, but we were happy. When David was born, Arthur cried. I will never forget it. His tears fell on the baby's body like a promise. He promised to protect us, take care of us, love us, and he kept it until the last day of his life. He died young, too young. An accident at the construction site where he worked. I was 36 and David was barely 10. That day, the world split in two, the before and the after. The before smelled of freshly baked bread, of Sundays in the park, of shared laughter. The after smelled of sadness, of overdue bills, of sweat, and of tears hidden in the pillow. I worked without rest. Mornings at the school, afternoons sewing other people's clothes, nights giving private tutoring. David was my motive. Every time I watched him sleep, I felt it was worth it. He used to say that someday he would buy me a house with a garden. So you don't have to live in the noise of the world, Mom. And I believed him. I was mother and father, teacher and nurse, guide and shadow. There was no birthday without cake, nor winter without a coat. Sometimes I deprived myself of eating so that he would have milk and bread. I remember one night when my shoes broke and I walked to work barefoot until the school door so as not to dirty the principal's floors. She never knew. No one knew. But my son, my little David, he saw it. And he hugged me so tight I thought he would never let go of me. I don't know when he started to change. Maybe it was when he got his first job. He didn't look at me the same way anymore. He didn't ask for my advice, and I foolishly thought it was part of growing up. But there was something else, a pride that settled in his eyes, a contempt I didn't understand. He stopped kissing my forehead. He stopped telling me his things. He began to be ashamed of me. The first time it really hurt was at his wedding. Vanessa looked splendid, I don't deny that. But during the ceremony, when the priest asked him to thank his parents, David only looked at Vanessa's mother. Not a word for me, not a look, as if I didn't exist. Later, at the reception, they sat me at a table in the back, far from the guests. Vanessa hugged me as she left, feigning affection, and whispered in my ear, "I promise to take care of him." "You have already done enough." Those words pierced my soul. Already done enough. It was her elegant way of saying I was in the way. And since then, that's how he treated me, like an old piece of furniture taking up space, like a memory that gets in the way. After the wedding came the years of silence. David barely called me. When he did, it was to ask me for money, or to ask if I could sell his father's land. I always said yes, because I thought that would make him happy. And every time I gave him something, I believed I was buying his affection back. I never learned that love is not bought nor begged for. Vanessa was the one who had the idea of moving in with me when they sold their apartment. She said that way they would keep me company in my old age. I, naively, accepted. I thought it was an opportunity to repair the relationship. But what they did was install themselves here as owners, change my furniture, throw away my things, transform my house into a battlefield where my voice was worth nothing. The first month I still cooked for the three of us. Then they forbade me from using the kitchen so as not to make a mess. Sometimes they gave me a plate of cold food in my room. And when I complained, David told me, "Don't be dramatic, Mom. You can't go around moving like before." As if old age were a disease. That was my life for years. Silence, resignation, obedience. Until that morning when he took away my Social Security. Until that instant when my son erased me from the world with a single sentence. But something broke inside me. Something that had been sleeping for decades. And that fracture turned into fire. Since that night of the refrigerator, I have felt something strange, a new calm. I no longer cry for what I lost, but for what I am about to recover. My dignity. The old Evelyn, the one who begged for affection, died the same day my son opened the freezer door. The one who remains now is another. A woman who learned that love shouldn't hurt and that there are silences more powerful than any scream. Sometimes I look at myself in the mirror and say in a low voice, "Evelyn, no one will ever take what is yours again." And I say it without trembling, with a firm voice, because if I learned anything after 70 years, it is that there is no betrayal worse than that of a son who forgets the mother who taught him to love. And that lesson, I plan to return to him soon. After the incident with the refrigerator, the house became a minefield. There were no shouts, but there were looks that weighed like stones. Vanessa didn't speak to me. When she did, it was only to give orders. David feigned calm, but every gesture of his was a threat. I could feel his rage boiling under his skin, a mute, cold rage. One afternoon, I heard him talking on the phone in the garden. "No, nothing is wrong," he was saying. "It was just a scare. She is already old, losing her mind." I stood still, behind the door, hearing how my own son justified my sanity to someone. She is already old, losing her mind. 8 words that erased my entire history, my years of work, my memories. 8 words that turned him into a stranger. That same night, they took my house keys. Vanessa approached with her usual sweet tone and said, "Evelyn, it is better this way. Lately, you get distracted and leave the door open. We don't want accidents." Accidents. That's what they called my freedom now. From then on, my days became slow. I ate breakfast alone, with hard bread and reheated coffee. They ate in the dining room, laughing, planning trips, talking about things that no longer included my name. Sometimes I heard them from my room. Their voices were like echoes of a foreign life. I spent the hours looking out the window. From there, I could see the lemon tree that Arthur and I planted when David was born. That tree has withstood storms, droughts, brutal pruning, and it still bears fruit. Every time I saw it, I said to myself, if the tree is still standing, I can do it too. One afternoon, I heard someone tapping gently on the gate. It was Betty, my neighbor of a lifetime. She was my age, short hair and hands cracked from years of nursing, the same woman who helped me when David was born, when Arthur died, when life hurt too much. "Evelyn," she whispered, "I haven't seen you for days. Are you okay?" "I can't talk much," I told her, looking back. "They took my keys." She watched me in silence, understanding more than what I said. "I'll leave you something in the mailbox," she murmured. "Check tonight." When night fell and everything was calm, I went to the door. Inside the mailbox was a small cloth bag. Inside, a small old cell phone, one of those with a flashlight, and a little paper that said, "In case you need help." I pressed the phone to my chest, trembling. I didn't remember the last time someone had done something so simple and so human for me. The following days, I feigned obedience. I responded with a smile to everything. "Yes, Vanessa. I will take my pills. Yes, David." I already turned off the stove. I let myself be dragged by their fake compassion until they let their guard down. Weakness was my disguise, and behind it, my mind worked without rest. I started using Betty's phone only at night. We communicated with brief messages. "Are you okay?" she wrote. "Yes, everything under control," I replied. Until one night I asked her for something that cost me to write. "I need a favor, Betty. Something important." She took a while to respond, but she did. "Whatever it is, friend, just tell me." The next morning, I pretended to feel sick. I touched my head. I walked slowly. I said I was dizzy. Vanessa, fed up, called David. "Your mother can't go on like this," she told him. "If she faints or falls, it will be our fault." "Then let her not leave the room," he replied. "Let her rest." And so they did. They locked me in. They locked the door with a key, leaving me only a glass of water and a tray of food. "For your own good," they said. They didn't know they were doing me a favor. That room became my sanctuary. There, where they thought they had me prisoner, I began to build my freedom. In the closet wall, I still kept the savings Arthur had left me. Gold coins and some old bills, wrapped in paper. They had slept there for more than 30 years, waiting for a purpose. Now they had one. At night, I used the cell phone to communicate with Mr. Roberts, an old friend of my husband. He had been the manager of the bank where I deposited my pension. "Evelyn, I thought you were retired," he said, surprised. "I am, Mr. Roberts. But I need your help. It is about my son." "What is happening?" "I will only say that I need to change the ownership of my account." Quietly. "That is not simple." "Nothing is, Mr. Roberts. But you know I was always a woman of my word." He sighed on the other end of the line. "All right, Evelyn. I will do it. But be careful." "Don't worry. No one will suspect anything." So night after night, I began to recover what was mine. While they slept, I wove my justice with patience. Betty brought me small things: an envelope, a document, a bank stamp. Every piece fit like an invisible thread. Every step brought me closer to the truth and to revenge. During the day, I listened to Vanessa laughing, talking on the phone, planning trips. Once I heard her say, "As soon as we sell this house, we are leaving here." I, from the room, gritted my teeth. I knew her ambition would be her ruin. The confinement lasted 3 weeks. In the end, David entered one morning with a compassionate gesture. "How do you feel, Mom?" he asked. "Better, son," I told him with a weak voice. "Much better." He looked at me with a mixture of relief and pity. "That is good." "Vanessa says that maybe you could go to a nursing home." "If it is best for you, of course," I replied, lowering my gaze. I saw his smile widen. He thought he had won, and I knew I was about to give it all back to him, with interest. That night, while the wind hit the windows, I opened my notebook and wrote. They took my keys, but not my reason. They locked up my body, but not my soul. And what a son steals out of ambition, a mother can recover with patience. I turned off the light, and for the first time in a long time, I slept peacefully. I knew that, very soon, the confinement would end, and that when that door opened, I wouldn't be the one who remained a prisoner. Silence has a sound that only old people understand. It is not the absence of noise. It is the presence of something that is brewing. That week, the house was too quiet. No shouts, no laughter, no footsteps. Vanessa and David spoke in whispers. They closed doors. They stayed up late. I pretended to sleep, but my ears remained awake, like those of a mother who senses the storm before seeing it. One night I heard them. My room faces the hallway, and the wall that separates us is thin as paper. The voices reached me clearly, although they tried to contain them. "We can't keep waiting, David," Vanessa was saying, impatient. "Your mother isn't going to last long. If we continue with this game, the money is going to vanish." "Relax," he replied. "As soon as she signs the sales papers, everything will be ours. And if she doesn't want to sign, she will. Trust me." There was a brief silence, followed by something worse, a laugh. "You are just like your father," she said, "always knowing how to get his way." "My father was an idiot," David replied with a hardness I didn't know in him. "That's why he died poor." "And you are not going to die like that," she said, getting closer. "You are going to do the right thing, love." What was heard next were not words, but kisses, and I, in the darkness, clenched my fists so hard that my nails dug into my palms. My son, my own son planning to sell my house, my refuge, the last corner where Arthur and I shared love, all while sleeping meters away from me. And he still had the nerve to call me Mom. The next day I got up early. I made coffee as if nothing had happened. When Vanessa entered the kitchen, she smiled at me with that empty smile she uses to hide her poison. "Did you sleep well, Evelyn?" "Yes, dear," I replied calmly. "I dreamed of my husband." "Ah, how nice," she said distractedly, checking her phone. "Yes?" "He told me that I was going to have visitors soon." "Visitors?" "Yes. People from the bank, I think." She raised her head. "From the bank?" "Dreaming is free, isn't it?" I replied to her, smiling. I saw her swallow hard. A slight tremor in her hand betrayed her nervousness. I knew then that they were starting to fear me. That same afternoon, I used Betty's phone to make a call. "Mr. Roberts," I said in a low voice, "I need you to prepare the papers." "Are you sure already?" "More than ever." "Then tomorrow I will stop by for the signature. Do it without my son finding out." "Of course, Evelyn. And don't worry. Everything will remain in your name." I hung up with my heart racing. It wasn't fear. It was adrenaline. The same I felt when I took David to the hospital for the first time as a child, when Arthur had a fever and there was no medicine, when the world pushed me and I remained standing. It was the strength that only wakes up when there is nothing left to lose. At night, I heard the couple talking again. This time their voices were sharper, nervous. "And what if the bank summons her without warning?" asked Vanessa. "They can't do it without my authorization," David replied. "I don't trust her." "That old woman isn't as dumb as she seems. She is already weak. She barely walks. She has no idea what is happening." I laughed in silence. If they knew how fast I still think, they would be scared. If they knew how much I listen, they would stop talking. The next morning, when David went to work, Vanessa stayed home. She brought me breakfast to the room, a gesture that would have been kind in another time, but now smelled of poison disguised as compassion. "Here you go, Evelyn," she said. "You have to eat well." "What a detail of yours, daughter," I replied, using the word daughter like a weapon. She smiled barely, with annoyance. "In a few days we will have good news," she announced. "Oh, really? What kind of news?" "The kind that changes life," she answered, turning on her heels. When she left, I got up and hid the plate under the bed. I didn't trust what was inside. The taste of the food was different, metallic. Instinct never failed me, and this time it wasn't going to start. In the afternoon, Betty approached with an envelope. "Here is everything," she told me. "Mr. Roberts prepared it." I opened it. The document transferring the house to my name, with a special clause. In case of death, it would become the property of a foundation for homeless elderly women. Not to my son, not to his wife, to others like me. I felt the tears run down my cheeks. "Thank you, Betty." "Don't thank me," she said. "Just promise me you will be careful." "I always was," I replied. "But now I will also be dangerous." That night I wrote a letter. I left it on my nightstand under Arthur's portrait. "If one day I don't wake up, don't cry for me. I wasn't a victim. I was a witness to my own war. And I won it without firing a single bullet." Then I kept another letter in the closet, intended for David. In it, I explained to him that I already knew everything, that if one day he found that note, it would be because he had lost everything, exactly as he lost me. When David returned home, something in his face had changed. Too much calm. That kind of calm that precedes violence. "Mom," he said with a soft voice, "tomorrow people from the bank will come." "Oh, really?" "What a surprise. We just need your signature. Nothing more." "Of course, son. I will sign whatever you want." His eyes lit up, believing that finally I had given up. He took my hand, feigning tenderness. "I knew you were going to understand." I returned the smile. "Yes, son, I understand everything." When he went to sleep, I stayed alone in the kitchen, staring into the gloom. The sound of the refrigerator filled the silence like a reminder. I thought of Arthur, of how he always said, "There are battles that are only won when the enemy thinks he has already conquered." That phrase accompanied me until dawn, and when the sun began to sneak through the window, I knew the moment had come to put my plan in motion. Before sleeping, I prayed in a low voice. I didn't ask for justice, nor revenge. I only asked for clarity. Because in life, sometimes the greatest punishment is not death, but remorse. And that would be my inheritance for my son. The day dawned with a calm that scared me. The sky was clean, the air still, and the house seemed to hold its breath. David had left early to the bank, accompanied by Vanessa. They left a folder of documents on the table, the same one that, according to them, would put everything in order. I sat in front of that folder for hours, without touching it. I just looked at it, as if looking at it were enough to understand its poison. I knew what it contained: the sale of my house, the assignment of my account, and the definitive closing of my independence. It was their final blow. And the best of all was that they believed I was going to give it to them with my own hands. When they returned, the afternoon was already dyed orange. Vanessa wore that expensive perfume that always gives me nausea, and David walked with the arrogance of one who thinks he has won. "Mom," he said, with a smile that seemed strange to me, "today is an important day." "Oh, really?" "Yes. We are going to finish with the paperwork. You won't have to worry about anything anymore." Vanessa sat in front of me and stared at me. "We just need your signature," she said, pushing the folder toward me. "Here." My hands trembled, but not from fear. It was the emotion of an actress before the final act. I took the pen, opened the papers, and pretended to read without understanding. "And this is from the bank?" I asked with a fragile voice. "Yes, Mom." "Trust me," David replied, looking at me as if I were a child giving me instructions. "Of course I trust, son. I always did." And I signed 1, 2, 3 times, without protesting. Vanessa smiled, satisfied, believing that my submission was authentic. "I like it like that, Evelyn. Cooperative. Cooperative." What a dangerous word. When they went to celebrate their victory to dinner out, I went to my room. I opened the closet drawer and took out a copy of the true documents, the ones Mr. Roberts had prepared days ago, the ones that completely annulled the signatures I had just placed, the ones that returned my house, my account, and my dignity to where they belonged, to me. While they signed their own deception, I had already closed mine. Mr. Roberts had done it all without noise, with the precision of a man who knows the corners of bureaucracy. "Evelyn," he told me on the phone, "when they present those papers, the system will show others. And believe me, the bank doesn't argue with a teacher who has receipts saved since 1983. I kept the copies in a metal box next to Arthur's photos and the savings book. Every signature, every stamp, every movement was part of a silent symphony that would soon explode. That night, I slept little. I heard when they arrived, laughing, clinking glasses in the kitchen. From the hallway, I heard Vanessa say, "It is done. Tomorrow, I put the house up for sale." "Relax," David replied. "First, they transfer the money to me. I don't want errors." "And your mother?" "My mother?" There was a pause. "My mother doesn't have anything anymore." I closed my eyes and promised myself that that would be the last time I would hear him speak like that. At dawn, Betty came with a quick step, disguised as a delivery woman. She wore a cap and a bag of bread in her hand. "Here is what you asked for," she told me, entering in silence. Inside the bag was an envelope with notary stamps. "Registered document," it said in blue ink. "Everything ready?" she asked. "Everything." We hugged without saying more. Two old women, tired but alive. Betty left through the back door just as I heard the main lock turn. David had returned. "Mom," he said, entering, "today the real estate agent will come." "For what?" "To appraise the house." "Oh, how nice." "So they will know how much what was my life is worth," I replied, pouring myself coffee. He looked at me with a mixture of irritation and contempt. "Don't start, Mom. Don't ruin it." "I never ruin anything, son. I only observe." That afternoon, the agent walked through the house, taking photos, measuring, asking questions. I followed him in silence, watching how his fingers touched the walls Arthur had painted with his hands, the frame where his handwriting was still visible, the steps where David took his first steps. It was as if a stranger were dissecting my memories. When they finished, Vanessa signed some papers and went out to the door to see him off. David stayed behind, reviewing the documents. "Are you happy, son?" I asked him. "Of course. This will give us a better life. To you or to us?" "To everyone," he said without looking up. "And where will I live?" "In the nursing home we saw the other day." "Ah, sure. The one with bars on the windows. Very cozy." His silence was my answer. I stared at him. There was no love in his face, only a mask of ambition. And behind that mask, a shadow I didn't recognize. When night fell, I locked myself in my room. I took out a notebook and wrote a single sentence. "Power is not held by the one who commands, but by the one who knows how to wait." Then I turned on the radio. An old song, Arthur's favorite, filled the room. For a moment I felt at peace, almost happy. But before sleeping, I promised myself something. When it all ended, when the theater collapsed, I wouldn't raise my voice. It wouldn't be necessary. My silence would be stronger than any scream. Before continuing, tell me here in the comments what you think of this story so far. And what would you do in her place? Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you goosebumps. The next morning, David received the call that would change everything. "What do you mean the documents are not valid?" he shouted. "That is impossible." I, from the hallway, feigned surprise. "Is something wrong, son?" He looked at me with a mixture of fury and bewilderment. "The bank says the deeds are in your name and that I can't do any transaction without your authorization." "Oh, how strange." "Maybe there was a mistake," I said, serving coffee. "What did you do, Mom?" "Nothing, son. I just signed what you gave me. Wasn't that what you wanted?" Vanessa entered running, desperate. "David, the real estate agent called. He said the sale froze." "What?" "The system says the property is registered as a protected asset by a foundation." My son's face became disfigured. The veins in his neck stood out like dry branches. He hit the table, threw the papers, shouted my name. I just watched him in silence, with my heart calm. The mask already fell, I thought. That afternoon, while they argued and the phone didn't stop ringing, I sat by the window with my cup of hot tea. The sun came in through the glass, warm, almost kind. And for the first time in years, I felt that that house belonged to me again. The next morning started with screams. Screams that mixed with the sound of the phone, the slamming of bedroom doors, and David's furious footsteps crossing the house like a wounded animal. I was in the kitchen, slowly stirring my coffee, when I saw him enter with his eyes wide open. What did you do, Mom? He vociferated. What the hell did you do? What is happening, son? Don't play innocent. The bank blocked my accounts. I can't access the money. I looked up, calm. How strange, David. Maybe the bank suspected something. You called them. You moved the papers. I know nothing of those things, son. I already told you I am old and I don't understand paperwork. His hands were trembling. He was red, beside himself. Vanessa entered behind him with a pale face and tense lips. They are investigating us, she said, almost in a whisper. What? I asked, feigning surprise. The bank reported irregular movements, and there is a complaint for falsification of signatures. David looked at her as if he were going to kill her. I told you to delete everything. I told you to do it right. Don't blame me. It was her. That old woman planned it all. I laughed softly. I couldn't help it. A dry laugh, which came out from the bottom of my soul, like an echo of repressed years. Of course I planned it, I told them, looking at both of them. What did you expect? What did you say? I said that I planned it. Since the day you took my keys. The silence was absolute. Not even the wall clock dared to sound. Vanessa was the first to react. It can't be, she murmured. You had no way to do it. Oh dear, I replied calmly. When a woman spends 70 years solving life alone, she learns to do many things. David took a step toward me. You ruined us. You left us with nothing. No, I didn't ruin you. You did it all by yourselves. You don't understand. It was for your own good. My own good? I laughed again louder. My good is not in the money, son. It is in not having to look at my son and feel shame. His eyes filled with anger. For an instant, I thought he was going to hit me. Vanessa took him by the arm, nervous. Don't you dare, David! Shut up! He yelled at her, pushing her. She fell to the floor, hitting her shoulder. I stood up slowly, without losing my calm. See, son, I said. That is what you did with your life. Becoming the same thing you swore not to be, a violent man, blinded by ambition. Vanessa got up crying. Don't look at me like that, you old witch. You ruined everything. No, Vanessa. I only took from you what wasn't yours. You are going to pay for this, she shouted and ran to the phone. I will call the police. Excellent idea, I replied. Tell them to check the documents you falsified. Her hand froze in the air. David looked at her, confused. What is she saying, Vanessa? She kept silent. I took one more step. Yes, David. You were naive. She was the one who signed in your name on the first papers. She was the one who pushed you to use my account. She wanted the house, not you. That is not true, she stammered. Don't listen to her. Check your email, son. There are copies of everything. He looked at me without knowing whether to believe me or not, but his doubt was enough. Vanessa, seized by panic, ran to the room and locked the door with a key. I heard her sobbing on the other side. It was the sweetest sound I had heard in years. David let himself fall into a chair. He had a lost look. For the first time in a long time, I saw him vulnerable, not like the arrogant man who humiliated me, but like the boy who once cried in my arms. Why did you do it, Mom? You wanted to take over what I built with my life. And that is not help, son. It is theft. His tears began to fall, and although it hurt me to see him like that, I didn't get closer. Not this time. It was his turn to understand what it is to be alone. Within a few hours, the police arrived. Curious neighbors, sirens, questions. Vanessa tried to blame me, but the documents spoke for themselves. The fake signatures, the transfers, the recorded calls. Everything was there, perfectly ordered. They had dug their own legal grave. The agents took Vanessa first. She was screaming, crying, cursing. David tried to stop them, but one of the officers told him, "You must also accompany us. There are complaints in your name." He looked at me before leaving, a look I will not forget, neither of hate nor of love, just of emptiness, as if suddenly he had understood what he lost. When the house fell silent, I sat again in front of the refrigerator. I opened the door. Inside, the block of ice I used that night remained, almost melted, but still guarding inside a piece of paper with the first evidence I found. I took it out, put it on the table, and watched it collapse slowly, drop by drop. It was like watching the past melt in front of me. I picked up the phone and called Betty. "It is done," I told her. "Are you okay?" "Yes, more than I have been in years." She kept silent and then asked, "And now what will you do?" "Live, Betty. Just live. You deserve it." I hung up and stared out the window. The lemon tree was still standing. New flowers, fresh sprouts, the same tree we planted when David was born. It seemed like a cruel and beautiful symbol at the same time. Life goes on, even if the roots are wounded. Before going to sleep, I looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, I recognized myself. Not the weak woman nor the forgotten mother, but a woman who survived everything, and who, without shedding a drop of blood, achieved justice. I wrote a last sentence in my notebook. In the end, I didn't scream for them to hear me. I kept silent, and that silence was my revenge. I turned off the light, and I slept deeply, like someone who, finally, can close their eyes without fear. 3 weeks have passed since that morning. 3 weeks since the police took David and Vanessa. Since the screams filled the house and the whole neighborhood found out about my story. Since then, the house became mine again. But it wasn't the same. The silence that used to hurt me now protected me. It was my shield, my peace, my way of breathing without fear. Every day I got up early. I prepared my coffee and opened the windows to let the sun in. The curtains moved freely again. The paintings, previously stored, returned to their places, and the aroma of jasmine filled the corners again. It was as if Arthur accompanied me again, walking through the hallways, smiling in every ray of light. Sometimes I sat on the porch to look at the lemon tree. The wind moved its branches with a sweetness that made me cry without rage, only with relief. For the first time in many years, my life belonged to me. One afternoon, Betty arrived with an expression I couldn't decipher. She had damp eyes and a slow step. "Evelyn," she said, leaving her purse on the table. "David got out." "From jail?" "Yes. He signed a deal with the judge. Vanessa pleaded guilty. They partially exonerated him." I nodded without emotion. I felt neither hate nor joy, just a serene emptiness. "Do you know where he is?" I asked. "They said he was coming here." I knew in that instant that destiny hadn't finished with me. It was getting dark when I heard the soft knock on the door. It wasn't an arrogant or impatient call. It was timid, almost fearful. I opened. There he was, my son, thinner, with a face marked by guilt and shame. He wore an old backpack on his shoulder and sunken eyes. "Mom," he whispered. I said nothing. I just stood looking at him. For a moment, I saw the boy he once was, the one who hid behind my skirt when he was afraid, the one who slept hugging my arm. He lowered his head. "I am not coming to ask you for anything," he said. "I just wanted to see you." "And what does that change?" I asked. "Nothing," he admitted. "But I needed to do it." He entered slowly. He looked around as if the house looked back at him. He touched the back of a chair, the edge of the table, the stove. "Everything is the same," he said. "Yes. What changes is not always seen." He sat in front of me, and for a while we didn't speak. The silence between us weighed more than any word. Finally, he broke it. "You were right." "About what?" "About Vanessa. About everything. Her. She used me, Mom. She didn't do it alone. You allowed it." He felt her swallowing hard. "I know. I was a coward. I wanted to have it all. And I lost the only thing that mattered." "And what was that?" I asked. "You." For the first time in years, my eyes filled with tears, but not from sadness. It was the weight of hearing what I thought I would never hear. David leaned toward me and took my hand. His skin was cold. "Forgive me, Mom. I can't undo what I did." "No, you can't," I replied. "But you can learn to live with it." He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something I hadn't seen ever. Sincerity. The same sincerity Arthur had when he made a mistake and came to apologize. For an instant, I felt a spark of tenderness, but it lasted little. The damage was still there, deep, irreparable. "Where are you going to stay?" I asked. "I don't know," he replied. "I just wanted to see you. And now I will go. I don't want to be a burden to you again." "You already were once, son. Don't do it again." He lowered his head. "I know. But if someday you want to see me—" "David," I interrupted him. "A son can lose everything. Money, work, even love. But when he loses his mother's respect, there is no return." He nodded, holding back tears. He got up slowly and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned. "Thank you for staying alive," he whispered. "I didn't deserve for you to do it." And he left. That night I stayed on the porch, watching the stars. The wind moved the branches of the tree, and in that sound I found comfort. Betty came later, with a blanket over her shoulders. "Did he tell you something?" "Yes," I replied without looking at her. "What?" "That he thanked me for staying alive." "And what did you tell him?" "Nothing." Sometimes silence is the only possible answer. We stayed like that, the two of us in silence, until she murmured, "Did you forgive him, Evelyn?" I thought for a long time before answering. "I don't know, but I don't hate him either." Maybe that is the closest thing to forgiveness. Days later, I received a letter with no return address. Inside, a photo. David sitting next to the lemon tree. It must have been taken before leaving. On the back, with his shaky handwriting, a single sentence. "You were always stronger than I thought." I smiled. Not from happiness, but from understanding. Because in the end, a mother's love doesn't disappear. It just transforms. It was no longer the blind devotion of before. It was a serene way of saying, "I already let you go." That night I wrote in my notebook, "The fall of a son is not always heard. Sometimes it is only felt, like the echo of a heart that breaks but keeps beating. I closed the notebook and kept it in the drawer next to Arthur's photos. The past was complete. The wound closed. And although I didn't know if David would return someday, I knew that I would no longer wait for him. Winter came early that year. The mornings were colder, the sunrises grayer, and the air brought that silence that only tired souls understand. But for the first time in a long time, the cold didn't hurt me. It was a different cold, clean, as if washing what remained of the past. 6 months have passed since the last time I saw David. I haven't heard from him again, nor do I expect to. And yet, every morning, when I prepare coffee, I look toward the window with the feeling that he is still out there, somewhere, breathing the same air as me. Not with resentment, just with distance. The distance needed to heal. After everything that happened, I decided that I didn't want to die in silence, nor surrounded by empty memories, so I opened the doors of my house. Literally. One day, Betty brought me an older woman who was crying in the square. Her son had kicked her out of the house. Her eyes were full of shame. I let her in, made her tea, and without thinking, I told her, "You can stay here for a few days." Then came another, and then another. And when I realized, my house, the one my son wanted to sell, had become a refuge, a place for forgotten women, for those whom life treated the same as me, with hardness, but not with defeat. Every night I hear them laugh, cook, sing old songs. The house breathes life again, and in each of them I see a little piece of me. Recently, a local journalist came. He had heard about the House of the Brave, as they call it in the neighborhood. He asked me to tell him my story. I laughed. I told him it wasn't a story of revenge. It was a story of memory. I told him that one day my son wanted to take everything from me, my money, my house, my voice, and that, without knowing it, he gave me back what I should never have lost, my dignity. He listened in silence, took notes, and before leaving, he asked me, "Did you forgive him, Mrs. Evelyn?" I smiled. "Forgiving is not always hugging," I told him. "Sometimes, forgiving is being able to pronounce his name without your soul trembling." Every sunset, I go out to the porch to see the lemon tree. It is still there, firm, with its branches loaded with fruit. Sometimes, one of the women from the shelter, Rose, accompanies me. She always says, "This tree never dies, Evelyn." "No," I reply, "because it is used to surviving storms." She smiles and takes my hand, and in that simple gesture, I find everything I need. Betty passed away a month ago. Her health faded slowly, like a candle that already gave all its light. Her last words were for me. "Don't let them forget you, Evelyn. Let them know that an older woman can also change her destiny." I promised her it would be so, and I have kept it. Every woman who arrives here hears my story, not as a sad tale, but as a warning. Love shouldn't hurt, not even when it comes from a son. Sometimes, on the coldest nights, I wake up and think I hear footsteps in the hallway. I usually think it is the wind, but other times, I am sure it is David. Not entering, not asking for anything, just passing, in silence, to make sure I am okay. And although I never open the door, I smile. Because the love between a mother and a son, although broken, never disappears completely. It just changes form. Today I turned 71. The women of the shelter prepared me a cake. They sang, they hugged me, and wrote a phrase on a poster board. "Thank you for giving us hope back, Evelyn." I didn't ask for any other gift than that, because in those words was everything I had looked for: recognition, affection, and peace. At night, when everyone was sleeping, I sat in front of the fire and opened my notebook one last time. The pages were full of crooked letters, crossed out words, dry tears, and I wrote, I wasn't born to be a martyr, but to remind you that life doesn't stop with pain. It reinvents itself, and that a mother can lose everything except the strength to get up again. I put out the fire, covered myself with a blanket, and stared at the flames that were still sparking. Winter continued outside, relentless. But inside the house, the warmth was human, the warmth of us who survived. I closed my eyes and whispered to the air, Arthur, you can rest now. Your house is full again. Not of money, of life. And so ended my story, a story that began with a humiliation and ended with a silent victory. Tell me in the comments which city you are listening to me from. If this story moved you, like and subscribe to the channel to continue accompanying stories of women who, like me, learned that it is never too late to recover their voice.